Joins us live from Brisbane. A very good morning to you, PM. There's lots to get to this morning, but first, as we just heard from Carl, it's a day for us to all reflect and remember those we lost.
That's very true, and right across the country today, particularly down by Wiley's Bars there at Coogee, they'll be gathering as they always do each year over in Perth, indeed down in my own Shire community where we also lost so many. It's a very sad day, and our thoughts are and prayers are with all of those who are just, it's another hard day for them, particularly today, but they never forget, and neither should we.
Yeah, it's really tough to believe that it's been 18 years, but let's shift focus a little bit now. How is the campaign in Queensland going? Can you win this for Deb Frecklington?
Oh, well, that's a matter for Deb Frecklington and the people of Queensland. I mean, I'm here talking about the budget that we've had, and it's a budget to get people back into jobs, and it's to get Queenslanders working again, a budget that's got 2.3 million Queenslanders are going to see tax cuts from, and talking to them about how we're moving forward with recycling and manufacturing. It's a budget for all Australians and particularly Queenslanders.
Come on, you're spruiking the budget, but you just happened to be there 2 weeks before the state election. It's good timing.
Well, look, I'm happy to be here with Deb Frecklington because she's got a plan to get Queenslanders working again, and I'd look forward to working with her. I mean, I work with every state and territory, as we've demonstrated as best as we possibly can through the National Cabinet, and we'll continue to. But it's important that we get businesses investing again and hiring again, and the way you do that is not by filling your buildings with public servants. You do it by getting businesses investing, because 8 out of 10 jobs are in the private sector, and we need our businesses to be able to spark up, and that's what the budget is designed to do.
And there is a spiralling debt that Queensland needs to deal with. It's quite eye-watering, that one. But look, the Deputy Premier, he's accused you of taking a week off to campaign for the LNP. You told him to grow up. I mean, we can't believe they allowed you in the first place.
Well, there were no special rules for me, and nor should there be for anyone. I mean, there shouldn't be any double standards on these things. They're the rules. I'll abide by those rules, and I understand that Queenslanders are very supportive of the border arrangements they have here, and they've just got to be done in a fair way and with no double standards. And importantly, they should only be there as long as they really have to be, because while they have played a role, they also come at a cost. Here in Queensland, the bounce back from the COVID recession hasn't been as strong as in other states and territories. 44% of jobs have come back here, compared to 70% in New South Wales and 70% in South Australia. So we need to get Queenslanders working again, and our budget plan for coming back from the COVID-19 recession, I think, will be very important here in Queensland, all the way across this great state.
You want the borders down, you want them open. Will Deb Frecklington do that if she wins?
Well, no, that's a judgment based on the health of advice for the Queensland Government and the Queensland Premier, whoever that happens to be, after the next election. And we've always worked with the Queensland Government and every state and territory government on these issues. They've got to make those calls based on health advice.
Come on, there's been a stoush between you and Anastasia Palaszczuk about borders. You have not remained quiet on this one.
No, I think being very consistent, Ali. I mean, I'm not looking to get into an argument about this at all. I just think it should be based on the health advice. On a couple of occasions there, I've raised specific cases which I thought were raised with me and sought compassion. And on both of those occasions, we eventually got a better outcome. But that was just about trying to help people.
Well, look, from this week, our wonderful Kiwi neighbours, they can come visit. They can come to New South Wales, Canberra and Northern Territory. Why not Queensland?
Well, first of all, congratulations to the Wallabies, given we're talking about Queensland.
That was a good game yesterday, wasn't it?
An inspiring game yesterday. So congratulations to everyone who was involved with that. Looking forward to the next one. Jacinda Ardern and I have decided to just double down on our bet from on the weekend. Maybe I should have taken a few points start, but my faith in the Wallabies was strong. Didn't seek a point start. No, we've got the Kiwis coming, and that's great. And potentially we're having discussions with the Pacific Islanders, but we've got to be careful. The risk there is that COVID could get into those communities, and they've done a fantastic job protecting their communities. But places like Singapore, Japan, Korea, South Korea have all done a tremendous job also. And we've had some initial discussions with those countries, but I wouldn't want to raise expectations too high there. Australians are still travelling overseas, I should stress, for work or compassionate reasons. I think there's been about 60,000 Australians who have gone overseas since the start of the crisis under those arrangements, and those approvals are turned around pretty quick on those circumstances. But we've got to be careful of that, because we're also trying to get as many Australians home as possible. And with Kiwis coming into particularly New South Wales, that's going to free up a lot more of those quarantine spaces in New South Wales so we can get more Australians home.
Well, I mean, we've got so many of them still stuck overseas who can't wait to get back and want to get back
True.
for Christmas, no doubt. But just going back to this travel bubble, interesting that you say don't get our hopes up, which sort of suggests it's not going to happen anytime soon. We know the US and Europe are off the cards until there's a vaccine, so potentially no travel there next year. But how will the travel bubble work exactly? What happens when they first arrive in Australia, and how do you ensure they're not exposed to COVID at an airport on their way in?
Well, we're treating New Zealand just like people coming from South Australia into New South Wales, or New South Wales into South Australia. I mean, New Zealand's also had great success on the health side, and so there are no greater COVID risks of someone, coming from Christchurch to Sydney than there is, coming from Brisbane to Sydney.
But isn't your issue when you're at an international?
Are put in place.
Oh, my apologies. Isn't the issue when you're at an international airport?
No, there's separate lanes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there are green lanes, and those processes are done through both on the New Zealand side and on the Australian side. Those who've come from New Zealand to Australia, they will still have to quarantine back in New Zealand. That's a matter for the New Zealand government, and they'll make their own calls on that. But for the New South Wales and the Northern Territory and the ACT, this is going to be good for their tourism. I mean, our tourism and hospitality industries have been battered, and this will be good for those states, and it'd be great when it can happen here in Queensland as well. But we can't do that at the moment, because if Kiwis are coming to Queensland, they have to quarantine, and that takes up places for Queenslanders to be able to come home from overseas.
All right, now your budget has been widely applauded, particularly the tax cuts, but did you miss an opportunity with childcare, because it's been a free kick for Albo?
Well, we've got $9.2 billion being invested in childcare, and it's means tested. I mean, when you're investing in important services, and childcare is an important service, that's why we actually increased our investment, and we saw the labour force participation rate, people looking and getting into jobs, go up. And in particular, female labour force participation increased as well. And when we put our changes in place, the cost of childcare, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, actually started to come down. So
fees will go up this year, Prime Minister.
Before the COVID-19 recession. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. But our means-tested supports for people to have their children in childcare, our view has always been pretty consistent. When taxpayers' money is being used in these sorts of supports, it should be means-tested. I mean, Labor's offering families on $500,000, $11,000 of subsidies. That's their plan. That's not our plan. Our plan is means-tested and targeting the support to those who need it most.
OK, so just very quickly, do you think childcare is affordable in this country?
Well, we've made it more affordable, there's no doubt about that, and we always look at these policies, Ali, but we do think things like this should be means-tested. All the supports we provide across the economy for individuals are means-tested, family tax benefits and other supports. They're there to help people, but we target them. You've got to target things because, money doesn't grow on trees, and what we're focusing our budget effort on, 90% of what we're spending additionally in this budget is in this year and next year to kickstart the economy and get people back into jobs. That's the most important priority, getting Australians back to work. And what we're focusing on is that task.
$1 trillion debt. I think money does grow on trees. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us this morning. No, look, I make fun of that. I shouldn't. It's a serious point. It's a big debt.
Have you got one of those trees?
Every dollar we spend is carefully spent and carefully targeted, I can assure you.
All right. I appreciate your time this morning, Prime Minister. Thank you.